Nestle Purinas, we won't be able to start. Beautiful. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
All right. So the first questions we are just we want to know from your perspective is what's going on with the vet business. We got some idea from Alicia talking to her, but from what you're seeing, what's going on with the business?
Wants to
In
go.
what aspect?
Where to start?
Well, what aspect are you thinking of, Nam? Like what do you see?
Well, I'd be curious to know what y'all have down from Alicia, and then we could build on top of that just for the sake of time. But it's every in my perspective, it seems like every territory, every business is different, and depending on how you've coached your clients in that business and the markets in those business, as well as how many corporate groups, like there's so many different facets that are going on at the same time. So that's why I'm curious as to what y'all have already, and maybe somebody else could start and then I'll jump in afterwards. But there's a lot going on.
Yeah. So, I think with these questions, what we're just aiming for is just like high level overview. We know that you all is working towards 2030 by 2030, right? There's a certain increase in revenue that we're trying to hit. There's certain diets and supplements that we're focusing on. So that's what we're thinking about, like high level overview. What is happening with the business? What are we working towards? What's new in 2025?
I
Okay, I'll
think
start.
one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think one thing that we are shifting, um, some of our conversations going from more technical, like just based off of the science, to more conversations of category, especially around supplements, and trying to educate more on the importance of the category to their business as a whole, and what this shifting landscape for the vet, what it means for the veterinarian, like their clients are purchasing supplements elsewhere. It's something that's important to them, like with these Gen Z and millennial owners,
Mm-hmm.
um, that they have to change how they practice as well. I don't know. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
If I could build on that just a little bit, she's absolutely correct. We've got more of a proactive pet owner these days. And so what we've found with proactive pet owners is supplements. And so our sales team has traditionally been trained on how to sell therapeutic diets and supplements. And so we're entering more of the wellness space. And so I think that there's an opportunity to start helping our
Mm-hmm.
field team learn how to capitalize on the wellness space and how to
Yep.
work with their veterinarians on how to leverage our expertise within supplements to gain some of that revenue for their clinics.
Yep, that's exactly what we're thinking when we're asking about what's going with the business. Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. That's what we're looking for. Is thus, Alicia mentioned, circumventing disruptors and those sorts of things too. I know that might be coming up, and that's coming up in a later question, but it's those sorts of things. What are
Hmm.
the new challenges and the roadblocks? Yeah.
Yep,
Thanks.
Yep.
yep. Megan,
Second
Nam,
thing,
yeah,
oh,
go ahead.
and Nam was kind of alluding to this, so maybe I'll tee it up for him. But the corporate groups, we have an increase in corporate groups, so that conversation is also different.
Hmm.
I would say from there's conversations happening at the corporate level, but then the individual rep has to have a conversation at the clinic level and try to tie in and still gain the business on a individual level. So, Nam, I know it's probably a passion of yours since you have a lot.
I'm so passionate about this, y'all. I hope you could hear the sarcasm. Um, so the challenges I have found, and this has happened to me in the last few weeks, is my inability to um there's so many decisions that are made on a higher level, whereas my progress and my work, that, and I could only speak to myself for myself, I can't speak for other folks, but I imagine they're dealing with something similar, is all the work that you put into these groups, um it 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 goes away once a higher level decision is made. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is one aspect of it. The other thing that's quite common with corporate groups is you also see a rotation of staff as well as doctors. Sometimes there isn't a permanent doctor, they're all associates. Sometimes there are they're all relief doctors as well. So
Mm,
some of these decisions to influence, though we are tasked to identify the opportunities in these clinics, we are limited by the fact that the people that we're talking to, whether office manager or doctors in there at the time, don't have leverage to make decisions on
mm,
what they stock on the shelf. So I find myself in situations for corporate groups needing to understand how much penetration and relationship we have on that higher level before I invest most of my time. For a specific example, I had a whole group of about 5, 6 clinics that I've built quite a bit of momentum on, but because the corporate decided to not use us and not
Mm-hmm.
have us on shelf at any of those clinics, that has
Mm-hmm.
diminished my opportunity to
wow.
work with them. So that is what I'm seeing is becoming a huge hurdle. And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably one of the bigger hurdles.
So I have a follow-up question for you then. So are we looking at what used to be the stakeholders are no longer the stakeholders? They are now the gatekeepers? Is that
They're not even the
because that,
gatekeepers at this point because now it's decisions are made at a higher level. It's made on the account manager level as
ah,
opposed to bottom up. These folks, these doctors and even office managers that you have relationships with that want you, they
mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
can't because a decision was made from the top down.
okay.
Yeah.
And what's been the strategy so far? I sounds like it's relatively new, but what's been the strategy so far to get in to talk to those corporate decision makers?
Mm-hmm.
So those
It's
conversations are, oh, I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
Nam, go ahead.
Okay, from seemingly, I don't know if things have changed, but it would be a combination. There's a group that's our corporate accounts group that is supposed to foster those relationships to actually get those conversations growing so that we can have a double edge approach, top
Mm-hmm.
down but bottom up, where
Yep.
my efforts will actually make sense. The challenge has been there was not enough folks in those areas to actually support that, to actually make that happen. And so we're missing the boat on some of those opportunities. And also not knowing the transparency of how far along those groups are working. We have no way of really knowing if they even are working on those groups.
Mm,
So that is a challenge. I also feel like there is a level that we are missing out on, and that's a regional level where these corporate account managers have relied on us to build these relationships at times, or we proactively being boots in the field trying to cultivate those relationships. I feel like that could be a position in itself regionally where you have one individual trying to get that middle market management from a same job as a PVC, but having someone dedicated to, I hate the word stock, but persistently find opportunities for engagement and strategically find opportunities. So from a regional level, you are actually building relationships. So if things are happening from the top down, you hear about it first to help the corporate account managers really um, capture those opportunities. But that's just me being a peon on the ground floor and what I'm seeing.
Mm.
well,
Okay.
it's that type of information that allows us to really be strategic in how we're presenting and coming at this as well. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your insights.
I
Oh,
Megan,
um
what would you
I
add?
would say I agree 100% in terms of connecting the new focus being like supplements and wellness side of the business.
Mm-hmm.
With it's kind of a traditionally, I don't want to say uncared about segment with our doctors, but it's how do you influence and get somebody excited about something that they're not necessarily excited about yet. Um, on corporate group side, I absolutely agree. How do we better as a field sales force? I guess it's almost like influencing with limited power, right?
So we have kind of some corporate groups versus others. We have free reign in terms of what we might want to do, and in others, our power is limited, and the clinic's power is limited. So how do we maybe navigate those conversations better? And then a third piece that we might want to think about in terms of what the field might be struggling with, in my opinion, is walking into a clinic with 10 to 15 possible things that we could talk about, right? How do we streamline those thoughts? How are we picking what we're going to lead with, and really just streamlining those priorities into a cohesive selling conversation or a negotiation conversation, so that we're walking out with the biggest bang for our buck. That would be another thing, because there is a lot when we talk about the vet business. There is a lot on our plates today. And sometimes, I see a chicken and I get distracted. So how do we really kind of focus in and have those powerful conversations?
Nice. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful to hear, right? So account manager level, health, wellness and supplement, and then having a strategic approach when we walk into a clinic. Gotcha. So it's kind of like it's similar to that questions number two, right? It's like what are we focusing on? So it sounds like you all have already answered that questions. Is there anything else you want to elaborate when we say focuses?
I would say one of the things that continues to evolve in our space and will continue to be a focus, I think, as time moves on, is the importance of e-commerce. And I think in specific markets, like I've got Atlanta and Charlotte and Raleigh, e-commerce seems to be more and more important, where veterinarians are just trying to send everything to e-commerce. So helping the team develop strategies for therapeutic diets with having some clinic shelf, but also being able to help the clinic be able to achieve their e-commerce goal. Because what we found is if we move everything to e-commerce, the likelihood of us getting a lot of revenue from that, the probability goes down because they go to a retail, like a Banfield or whatnot. So I would say the e-commerce is just a topic that continues to evolve with us.
Okay. Who else?
We also talk about like opportunities with relief doctors. I feel like, if you have a relief doctor that you could really drive to advocate for us, that's, how can we leverage the fact that they're not committed to any specific clinic, but leverage it to our benefit, but of course, they have to have some type of benefit as well.
Yeah,
Because I
there's a
think
real
that's a missed opportunity.
that's some really powerful insights, because their tendrils have a lot of power if we leverage them. Nice. Thanks.
So help me understand the relief doctors, they are not tied to one clinic. They move around. They help what's needed. Is that what a relief doctor does?
Generally, there are a lot of different nuances, different relationships, but the idea is they are not stuck at one specific clinic, and they are paid per day typically. Um, and they set up their own schedule, but
Kind of
I
like a
feel like
substitute teacher. Like they get the call, are
y-
you available? Like, can you come to this place? And then others are more
Mm,
structured.
yeah.
I
So how do
I kind of
we
like,
figure out
sorry.
some type of plan there?
right.
Yeah, I'm likening it to a human urgent care, right? Where some are contracted in and some are on call to come and fill in. Is that a good analogy?
It could be that way. Yeah. It's pretty flexible, but it's basically they are not the business part of the business. They are supplementing the business.
Yeah.
They're there for
Yeah.
Nice.
2 weeks when a doctor goes on vacation.
Got
Yeah.
it. Got it.
Okay.
And you're right in terms of their reach. Nice.
Right. So they might have breadth in terms of like Linda said, they have tentacles, different areas. They might not have the depth of working with one clinic, but they have the exposure to different clinics where they might have the power to, chime in and bring new ideas to a certain team that they're working with temporarily. Okay. So
One more,
we're
sorry, one more thing
go ahead.
about that. Some focuses for the vet business, we have 2 product launches this year or more. Um, and then we also have this kind of sticky thing with Citibank of getting checks written that I feel like gets a lot of people hung up in conversations when they want to implement a program or some sort of rebate offer that I don't know about Megan and Nam, but I'm sure Lisa hears it all the time also of I can't do this because they don't have a W-9 on file and Citibank is such a pain to deal with and all of these objections from our own.
A lot of objections and hurdles when it comes to that conversation, and not much we can do other than, I mean, and personally, I don't want to be involved with their bank at all.
Right.
Ever. I don't want to see their account information or anything like that, but I want it to be an easy process. Yeah, that's a challenging conversation, especially when there's hiccups and roadblocks, Becca. I agree. The other thing in terms of focuses for me is how do I differentiate myself from other vendors that they see every day? There's a lot of us coming in and out of their door. So am I adding value? How am I building those relationships? What does that look like to become the preferred vendor?
That's a powerful word, differentiation. So thanks. Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. So if we're gonna zoom out a little bit and not just thinking about what we are focusing on, but if we zoom out a little bit more and think about the veterinarian industry in general, because that's gonna help us kind of like know where we are in the industry so we can position ourselves more effectively in the new year. So if we think about the industry, the veterinary industry, what are you all seeing? It's kind of like the trends. So like wellness is a trend. Like pet owners are being more proactive, shifting. What else do you see that's a trend in the industry?
Lack of resources.
Okay.
Just in general, they're always short staffed. They're always looking for new people. And so, scheduling time, knowing that they have some of these issues happening within the clinic can be a challenge.
Okay.
Getting used to the new normal of post-pandemic or pandemic spending, and now the post-pandemic spending, they're seeing less business overall, which is pretty and that shift, like Lisa had mentioned, to e-com. So they're seeing more business go to e-com. There was something that came out in a Zoetis newsletter that said their patient or their clients are spending their money for their preventative treatments like heartworm and things, flea and tick, online, but that's also freeing up money for in-clinic use, for in-clinic spending. So they will spend it on services in clinic and then don't be afraid of the e-com world, but use it to your advantage of like, how do you work with the e-com to build up your services that you're offering in clinic? So I think that's a big trend, is just figuring out how they fit in this e-com virtual world
And
keep their
just on top
profits.
of that, yeah, on top of that, and the relationship is becoming less and less important from the client to doctor standpoint because of the lack of consistency of doctors. So, you have clinics where every single day it's a different doctor. They just don't feel the level of commitment, therefore they just shop around. Whereas before there was a time where, even if things were a little bit more, they would go back to the same doctor because they've known them for 20 years. We're seeing a lot of those folks retire, or um, it just feels like the level of engagement that folks feel from talking to clinics that don't have a permanent doctor. It's very challenging for them to keep clients at this point.
Okay.
On the smaller side of clinics, I see, battling, I don't know, like bad Yelp reviews, I guess you can say, like online reviews in terms of those keyboard warriors that, you know, either make up and or exaggerate a situation. I think there's a lot of putting out fires there with customer relations. And there's a lot of emotional baggage on the staff and doctors that we deal with that they have to carry.
Mm.
Oh,
Competition is heating up too, I would say, in terms of industry trends. I think that there was a little bit of lull from some of our competition. And it seems like this year we have a new competitor emerging in the supplement space. We have new diets coming out that will challenge our positioning in some areas. So those external threats to our business are a little bit more amped up, I think, for this year.
Yeah. Yeah, like Linda mentioned, we also have those disruptors, right,
Yep.
coming into the industry. Okay. Okay.
One
Uh,
thing I wanted to point out though,
mhm.
that might be a missed opportunity, and this is especially with those corporate groups. Most of these corporate groups don't see the reps that often. Like whereas before when they were independent, where these farmer reps could go in and make a difference, they don't see that much engagement from their reps anymore. So there's a lack of even knowing, lack of a relationship, which I feel that they still want, but they feel like because they're part of this group, they don't get. And I think that's an opportunity for us if we're trying to win share, um, to really focus on what does that mean? What type of support on the clinic side we could really leverage that'll differentiate ourselves from all these other guys that don't even come see the clinics.
So I have two questions on that. So one, how many hurdles do we as like people on the ground have to jump through to get to those corporate group people, right?
Well,
And then
I say
two, like,
tenure. Oh, go ahead.
what makes you say like these corporate groups want that engagement from the reps? So like, okay, if you want to address the first one.
So I wouldn't say the corporate group necessarily wants it, but I could tell you the clinic does
Mm-hmm.
because their staff feel underappreciated. Oftentimes, they lack resources to take care of their staff. In fact, I've actually used that to my advantage to get some clinics to switch over that are part of corporate groups where I do have more leverage. But a lot of this goes back to relationship building, which I feel that we are starting to lose. Most of my business and the angles that I'm able to run, the doors that are open for me, I rely on my relationships to build those angles in for me. And I think strategically, I'm relying heavily on those folks to open those doors for me as well. And
Mm-hmm.
the more we focus on kind of the smaller picture transactional stuff, I fear that we're missing out on the opportunity on how we could work these angles to actually open doors for us. And that's why I think we need, not only boots on the floor, we need that middle market
Mm-hmm.
regional manager covering kind of that middle market region person, and of course the top level corporate working the top down, so
Mm-hmm.
that we could focus and let them know that we do want their business, and we're putting folks in areas where we could listen and hear what they actually need to actually gain that partnership.
Mm. Okay. So
rather than the 15 minutes of FaceTime that you're given, you need that additional backfill. Yeah. Nice.
so
Yeah,
we
especially with the larger groups.
So we as people on the ground PVCs, we don't interact directly with the corporate groups people. We have the corporate account managers groups who deal with them, correct? Is that you're
Correct.
saying them? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, like the relationship building part is huge and is important as you mentioned, Nam, is continue to leverage that and come in at it at that angle to help us continue to be able to be top of mind and provide value that we can when they're understaffed and under resourced, right? So um, I'm curious when we think about all these things that's happening, the trends, like where do we feel like we are winning? Like where do we feel like we're doing well in this market, in this industry?
I feel like we've kind of, this might be um, talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I do feel like we do well at having the conversation on ecom because we've been talking it for so long. So even though there's a lot of opportunity still to have that conversation of carrying product, keeping product in clinic, as well as pushing ecom, I feel like we excel at talking that our ecom platform, um, and educating on why it's important to have both options.
Nice.
I do feel like one of the things we do very well, and we always have since I've been here at least, is building advocacy. So with the exception of what Nam was just explaining, when things happen at the corporate level and we're not allowed in the clinic anymore, right, out of our control. But when we do have control and we're able to build those relationships and build advocacy, we're pretty good at keeping the clinics once we move them from Royal or Hills. And so our level of service, our feet on the street, I would put up against the competitors any day, because the feedback I get on them tends to be like they're pushy, and where we come at it from the more consultative approach, more of the partnership opportunities. So I would say we've always done that well. We're just running into some situations with corporate accounts where it doesn't matter how well we're doing at the clinic level if we can't win at corporate. So just to kind of provide a little bit deeper insight, for several years, the drug companies, they would win these relationships with corporate groups, and if you were in there, you just kind of get kicked out. And that's never necessarily been a topic with food, but I think that is a space now that's going to become it's going to become a topic of conversation. And so it's all about building relationships at the top, just like he said, the regional, and then also the organic growth and partnerships from the bottom.
Yeah. So at all
So-
three levels.
So
Yeah.
my question to you all then as a follow-up is, since you're winning in that, how have you been leveraging that in those moments when the the Hills win, unbeknownst to you, like all of a sudden there's a shift change?
Yeah.
What's been successful besides the relationship? What's been successful in regaining the market when it gets pulled from you?
Well, this just happened last week. So we're still building the strategies, but I would say one of the things that we did in my region to be able to keep some of that volume that we potentially would lose is we came in with some pretty aggressive resources that they can offer their clients. So focusing on what we can control, which was e-commerce, and trying to keep the clients that we do have instead of them switching over to the competitor. So more to come on that, because again, this just happened, but I think the more resources we can provide to the clinics to keep their clients on Purina, the better our chances of sustaining as much volume as we can.
Nice. Sorry you're going through that. And so I'm just thinking through like how to leverage what's been successful. We want to make sure others follow in your footsteps and leverage those successes. So thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank you folks so much. I got to jump to this lunch and learn. But thank you all for your time and listening to us. I'm really looking forward to kind of the next steps after this. But I got to get going.
Good luck,
Thanks for
Dan.
your time.
Thanks, Nam.
All right. Bye.
I think one of the things Lisa just said there is, we're going to get those disruptors, right? We're going to get things that are like, oh crap, this sucks. But it is focusing on what I can control. Like, as she said, there are certain levers that we still have some control over that we can really make sure that we don't let go of them. And I think it's that pivot when you're faced with those disruptors that was are going to happen. But that ability to be able to be like, what do I still have? What can I leverage? And let's not lose sight of that. It might not be as huge as I wanted, but it's something. Maintain that relationship, keep working that, and then hopefully corporate comes around and says, "Just kidding," and we get our feet back in there.
I'm curious. So we mentioned e-commerce as a resource that we can offer to the clinics. What else is in our arsenal to kind of like as resources and value to bring back the relationship?
Well, we can still, um, one thing that differentiates us from Hills
Hmm.
and Royal Canin, which Royal Canin is coming out with a supplement, but is our supplement. So
Hmm.
um, that is something that differentiates us, and they would keep ordering from us. I also do think it comes down to the relationship, though, because we all have,
Hmm.
it's come down with us that we're the preferred partner of this corporate account and this corporate account, but it doesn't always translate to them switching their business. So I think in the end, it does come down to that relationship and keeping, they might moving forward have this on the shelf, but they can still reach for Purina in the
Hmm.
e-com. So continuing that partnership on and that relationship in the clinic level is important.
Absolutely.
I find that amazing. Like no matter what AI we have, what new competitors we have, as long as like we're able to build that relationship and trust, people will still come back to us.
Yeah.
Linda, what
Well,
were
and
you
I
gonna
think if
say?
you have staff involved too, I mean,
Hmm.
Mike, if I worked at a company and they, had Diet Coke available at all times, and then they came to me tomorrow and be like, just kidding, Pepsi's our favorite, I'm still personally going to reach for my Diet Coke. So I think it's engaging in staff as well. If they're already using our Purina products, let's have them keep using it, because those candid conversations between the vet tech and the client in the exam room, they do go places.
Hmm.
So let's maintain, if we don't have the corporate accounts, you know, preferred relationship, we can at least maintain our relationship with the staff inside that hospital.
Yeah.
And I was thinking too, when we were talking resources tree, I was thinking too, do you all have at your disposal, like, I'm sure you have internal testimonials, but do you have a collective group of testimonials and other corporate, resources that you could send their way in those moments when you don't have that face-to-face time? Are there things that are, injected in those other moments?
Sometimes, I think, depending on maybe if you collected the testimony yourself, or if maybe somebody at like a coworker that you work closely with might have something. I
Mm-hmm.
think those are the ones I leverage more often.
Mm-hmm.
There's a handful, I think, of testimonial collateral that comes from Purina, but the rest I've kind of gathered on my own. So nothing I would say
Hmm.
official, but I
Okay.
also might just be unknowing in that respect. So Becca and Lisa, if there's something out there, let me know. I'll use it.
Not to my
Ellie?
knowledge.
Yeah. We don't
Yeah,
have
I'm
any
just
collective.
right. I'm just thinking of everything. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of avenues to be out thinking outside the box. So that might be something. And I'll have, know your business, but there might be other resources that we're not thinking of to help um, folks tap into that maybe they have used or need to revisit because they haven't done it in a while. So if you think of those, you can certainly send them our way. You might not
Yeah.
have them top of mind, but you can certainly send them forward.
Hmm. Um, by the way, is there anything right now that Linda and I haven't asked that we should be asking that would be helpful for us as we continue to think about um, these situations that we're dealing with the vet business?
Nothing comes to mind. I mean, it kind of goes with the theme of everything we've been talking about,
Hmm.
though,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
getting better with competitive selling. I think it was Megan that mentioned it, that our competitors have really come out the gate swinging this year. Royal Canin lost some share last year, and they want it back. And we seem to be, I would say, because we're the lower market share, we seem to be the easier target.
Mm.
And Hills either sustains or they go up a couple points. But competitive selling is just one area that I think as an organization we can always get better at.
Hmm. Hmm. Becca, Megan, anything from your end that you're like they should
I
know
was
this?
nodding my head at Lisa. I agree.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we gave you, I mean, ideally you're taking this information and trying to come up with this case study piece for April, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I
Yep.
think the buckets we've hit on are probably going to be the ones that are the largest top of mind issues and conversations that PVCs are struggling with today.
So corporate group for sure, right? The wellness, the supplement, right? What are the other buckets that you all see is like really hit on these buckets?
Well, when it comes to corporate groups, I think it was how do we influence with sometimes limited power. I mean, we're not going to. I'm not going to call up a corporate group today. We have a corporate groups team that's working on that, and I think that department is actually doing a great job and growing, and changing like we need them to. So it's awesome to see the support we're getting on that side. But at the insular level, walking into the individual clinic, how do we influence there when they need to run it by somebody higher up, kind of thing. I think the supplements or the wellness category, how do you sell a category to somebody who maybe isn't, the champion of that segment? Why, how do you get them to see the value of that? Not only the value of it in general, but the value of having it in their clinic for sale, as opposed to just letting their customer buy it elsewhere.
Right.
I think the Citibank is a challenging conversation that Becca brought up in terms of navigating something that's complex.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Linda and I are able to help with that Citibank bucket.
Well, it's terms of a challenging conversation.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Right.
I hear what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Because it's another type of objection, ultimately. Yeah.
Okay.
And same thing with e-com. We are pretty good at having the e-com conversation, but it's one we have every single day. If you're not using our platform, let's make sure we're using a platform to where these profits and these sales are staying within the clinic. And that means using a vet distribution channel kind of platform. And I don't want to say don't use Chewy or Amazon, but as a PVC, I don't see those numbers in my bonuses, and the clinic doesn't get commissions on it if those platforms are the ones being used. Our product still gets sold, so that's great. But
so when you say e-commerce, are you talking like Outvet Direct, and then other platforms so the profits would stay with us?
Yeah, so the other platforms tree would be something like certain distributors have their own platform, just like Purina has Vet Direct. A distributor might have their own platform that a hospital chooses to use. They might use 3 different e-commerce platforms. But I also have hospitals that are like, we don't mess with it. I don't want to do it. They're going to Chewy and I'm fine with it. Can you change that doctor's mind? Maybe, maybe not.
I mean, like if I'm a doctor and if I can have a centralized e-commerce versus going on 3 different sites for 3 different distributors, that sounds like it's going to be easier for me to just go on Chewy, right? Or am I not understanding it right?
Well, if you tell your customers to use Chewy, you don't make any profit margins on that. It's not like you sold the bag from your lobby. However, if you use ProPlan Vet Direct, it's like you had the bag in your lobby, you sold it, and those sales dollars go directly into your pocket. That's the difference, but it's also a hassle. And so I agree. I see all sides on why a person might make that decision one way or the other.
Yeah, I like how you use that. I like how you use that cushion in there. It's like I can see all sides, right? That's how you handle objections.
I understand.
So that leads me to because I know we've been talking about like the challenges that we're doing and opportunities we're focusing on. Like number 6, that ties to, so I can already see like some of the skills that we'll be hitting on, right? Like influencing with limited power, getting them to see the values. When we think about the negotiation program that we've been through, what are the skills do you see would be like, this would be really important for us to revisit, to hone, to polish, when we think about that negotiation training that we've been through?
I really loved, and I use it now. I do this training with new hires now, and I really loved the accusation audit.
Nice.
Prepping for objections and being prepared and knowing how to steer those conversations. That was my favorite piece of the training.
And
I feel like that's a hit and miss. Like some people's like, oh, I love it. Some people's like, I don't know, Tree. I don't know if I'm gonna do that.
Tree, I was going right there. That is such a hard sell for us. And when I talked earlier about resources, that would be even something powerful to know, hey, this person used it and they got 4 more sales last week just because they started with an accusation audit, right? I think there's an opportunity to leverage some successes, but I know you all are busy. I understand completely. You're busy and all those wins don't necessarily get translated, but those are, I'm excited to hear that, that it's working.
Yeah.
So
I
Me
love the
too.
accusation on it too. I think that was when I left training. That was the one, Lisa, that I too was like, I'm like, I like that one.
Yeah.
The whole part of the pre-call planning, right? Are you prepared for this conversation? What are you, then it kind of speaks to what I was talking about on streamlining, right? Like, what are we selling? Why are we selling it? And do we have the resources we need to be successful in that conversation? I don't always do it. I mean, I'll be honest. There's sometimes you park the car and you get out and you walk in and you think, and then you leave and you think, well, shoot, I was going to talk about X, Y, and Z and I forgot.
Right. And it ties to what you said earlier. It's like we have all these 15 things, these things on a plate. How can we be strategic when we walk in and have those conversations?
Yeah.
Right?
And back to the power of the agenda statement, even if it's not written down, we have it pre-planned. So we'll go back and refresh on the pre-plan, the power of the pre-plan. Thanks.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Becca? What would you like for us to focus on when we do
Well,
these?
I need like a one pager of
Okay.
what all the steps were
Mm-hmm.
again, because like
Yeah.
I forgot that, but it's something that I mean I do, and I think anytime I have like a big conversation or like even in 4C selling, I believe it's in there where you have to kind of role play in your head of like objections that would come up and your responses, and I just think it's almost a natural thing that most salespeople should be doing. So that's uh interesting that you get a lot of pushback on it because
Okay.
it's
This just gave me an
seems
idea,
natural.
Linda, where it's like, what if we send out like a survey with all these skills that we've learned in the program and ask everyone, like, if you would rank these, like, what would you like to see as the skills that we should focus on for this year? And then, so we can get a lot of responses and then see what comes up as like the top skills that we should focus on. And maybe accusation audit would be up there, right? For us to focus on. I know your time's busy, and we have 1 minute left. So we'll let you all go 1 minute early. We thank you so much for your time and for having this conversation with us. Linda and I really, really appreciate it.